We're going to get going, everybody. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everybody. Roll call, please.
Mr. Arcuri? Mr. Beaumont?
Here.
Mr. Bronski?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Coyne?
Here.
Mr. Julia?
Here.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Kane? Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Rotolo? Ms. Cesny? Here. And Mr. Wallace.
Thank you. You have the draft October 23, 2017 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Second? Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Any comments, corrections, deletions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The next item on our agenda, resolution award of construction contract for replacement of the roof system at Inkley Meter and Chemical Feed Building. Is this near the clubhouse? I was just curious.
Were they checked out?
The references?
Yeah.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Nelson Associates contacted 3 of them, got 3 good ones.
You have the resolutions in the packet. You want to take us through this?
Sure. On the last Tuesday and the 14th, the Capital Committee met to consider 2 construction contracts for award tonight. One is for the new roof at the chemical treatment building up near Hinkley Dam, and another one for some access improvements at the plant we can talk about next. But up at the dam, we have about a 1,200 square foot, 30 by 40 foot cinder block building with a roof that was last repaired in 1990. And at this time, it needs new shingles, underlayment. We're putting some new vents in that we didn't have before, as well as repairing some of the ceiling that's damaged, or all of the ceiling inside. So basically what we're going to do is have the outer shell of the building all buttoned up. And as we've done with our pump stations and some of our other older structures, then once the roof is fixed and not leaking, we'll get inside and do some upgrades to the interior as well. But we put some plans together, went out for bids, received 7 bids. Our low bidder is North Route Development Corp. from up in Gouverneur area at $16,500. It's within our budget. Second low bid was Alexander Corp. here, Richard Alexander and Marcy at $22,000. North Route has not done any work with us before, so we did have the architect check the references, and we've got their recommendation in writing that they're good to go. We won't, of course, get them started until we sign a contract, and we don't do that until we have their insurance and a performance bond on file, which covers the work should something happen during the contract or unacceptable performance for whatever reason. We always have a performance bond. And then on the roof, we have our maintenance bond and a long-term bond on the shingles themselves are guaranteed. So, glad to answer any other questions.
Any questions for Dick? Bruce? Second? Sure. Dave? Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The next one, Dick?
Yes, this was also discussed at the committee, and they elected to move it to the full board. And this is for some, what we're terming access and safety improvements up at the water treatment plant in 2 locations. First location is down near our sludge lagoons. We have 3 lagoons and then a decant basin, which is basically a pond. And there's a little bit of slope and elevation between the access road and where we need to do some water quality sampling. It's a challenge in the summer, even more of a challenge in the winter. So what we'll be doing down there is constructing some ramps, steps, railings, supported by some foundation work. And then up at the building, we have some large exhaust fans which need regular maintenance. And we've never had a good way to get at those outside of the chemical mixing room. So that's also a small sidewalk, a railing, and a ramp, steps up to the platforms. Really safety, just make it a lot easier to do the work, much safer to do the work. And when it's that way, you do it more, tend to do it more often. So again, we discussed this at the committee. We had 3 contractors bid. These were all local. The BB Construction Services was the low at $62,490. Our second bid was from Cutrello Masonry or Building Services Corp. at $98,000, and we had another bid just over $100,000. BB's done work with us before and performed very well, and also for the engineers that designed this work. So the recommendation is that we do award to BB. Again, it's within the budget we have available for the work. Both of these projects, if they can get to them this year, if we have a light December, you know, we have good weather, they can get started. Otherwise, they do have until midsummer of next year to complete the work. We want to make sure that the weather is suitable for this kind of effort. So.
Any questions for Dick?
Make motion to.
Thanks, Dave. Second. Thank you. Any further comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next resolution is the time bank donations, which is right behind the first two. Who's doing this? You?
Yep. So last month we introduced this and had quite a bit of discussion about it. Our HR director, Greg Santry, was here at the last meeting and is here again tonight. Greg took pretty good notes of a lot of the comments that were made and has made several adjustments to a draft that, which I have to apologize, he had a draft of the mechanics of this ready to go and I didn't realize that. So that was not before you at the last meeting. However, since that time too, our chairman asked me to check into with our labor council as to whether or not we needed to actually work with the two bargaining units to put this kind of a program in place. And so also I think in front of you is an opinion from council, which I think went out, right? Mm-hmm. Saying that in fact if we want to essentially bestow any sort of additional benefit on the employees in the bargaining unit where it's not specifically addressed within the agreement, that we essentially need their permission to do that. And so what this resolution would do is to authorize me and the Water Authority to enter into the agreement with the Teamsters to enact the program as it's laid out before you. I think some of the confusion from last month was that there was an impression that we had to negotiate this program with the units and that they were going to, you know, have a say in how it was going to run and make demands in the program itself. That's not the case. It's essentially take it or leave it. So the way that the program is structured is what's included in the background memo and gives us pretty wide-ranging flexibility and discretion to be able to do it or not do it as we see fit given circumstances. And as I said, Greg took a lot of notes of the comments that were made at the last meeting and I think has made several adjustments to this to reflect those comments. So if you have any further comments or questions about it, Greg and I are prepared to answer your questions.
Did you just run through the process for leave accumulation and how it works?
Greg, you want to do it? Leave accumulation and how it works.
For individuals who, under normal circumstances, aside from this particular agreement, or with regard to
how do people accumulate leave and how much do they get during the year? And then the second question would be, how do you exercise this in terms of what's the procedure for exercising it? You know, how do they have to expend their leave before they're eligible to be part of it?
I'm sorry, how do
they become eligible to be part of this?
Okay.
And so the first one is, how do people accumulate leave? And secondly, how does Pat make a decision to exercise this policy?
I'm sorry, doesn't paragraph 2 cover that?
Well, it doesn't tell how an individual would accumulate.
No, I'm curious. I want to know how much
to
leave
the
people
execution of the
get
agreement
per year of various types.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
So, very good question. I'll break it up into 3 different areas. One would be for individuals who are members of the New York State Teamster Bargaining Unit 294. Time that is received by them would be granted pursuant to the labor agreement which we had. Employees hired prior to 2002 would be given 13 sick days on an annual basis. Initially, for the first year, they would be given 9, and then it would go to 13 sick days a year. Vacation time would be 1 week for the first 6 months of employment, 2 weeks upon completion of the first 12 months of employment. Upon completion of 5 years, they would be given an additional week, and then 10 years, and it goes up to 20 years. After 20 years of service, it goes up to a maximum of 5 weeks of vacation for Teamster people who were in the Teamster unit. The change to the contract was made in the mid-2000s, where the maximum amount of sick time for individuals would be 9 sick days a year, and those would be granted after 6 months of employment. And the time is actually credited to each individual employee on a bi-weekly basis in increments of hours for a total of 9 sick days after 1 year. That's for the Teamsters. For the management, it pretty much mirrors that. Well, it specifically mirrors that, with the exception of the exact date of implementation. All other employees who are hired by this organization who are not bound by terms and conditions of either bargaining unit has 2 options. Either the executive director issues them a letter stating that they will receive all and any benefits equal to, but not less than, the management union, or a specific designated contractual obligation for compensable time. So that's how the time is accrued over the years.
How about personal days?
Personal days would be 1 personal day for, if you were hired between January and June, you would receive 1 personal day. I'm sorry, 2 personal days hired between January and June for that calendar year. After June 1st, you would receive 1 personal day for that calendar year. They expire on New Year's Eve and then are automatically credited on the 1st day of January, must be used within the calendar year, or they would expire. I can say in 15 years, no one has left any personal days on the table. That's 2 personal days per year per individual, and that's across the board. It's in both of the contracts and given to non-represented people. Now, to address the second part of your question, how
about comp time?
Comp time, again, in the event that an individual employee within the New York State Teamster unit were to get comp time, it would have to be only for specific jobs as defined in the contract, which is limited to office positions, clerical positions, or civil service competitive tested positions.
So these people are not eligible for overtime?
They're eligible for overtime. Comp time would be time worked and not receiving pay, and then they must use an equivalent amount of time off without
what's
pay.
the difference between, overtime and comp time? Doesn't
Overtime is cash.
Doesn't a person automatically get paid overtime when they exceed the number of hours?
No, they do not. They can request comp time. And
they get comp time instead of overtime?
No, they can request comp time, at which point it would then be granted if their manager approves it, and then they would not be paid financial compensation in the terms of dollars. They would be given a comparable amount of time to be used at a later date within 2 payroll cycles to take time off with
So it has to be used within 2 pay periods?
Within 2 pay periods.
It's not cumulative.
Okay. So I see you had it included in there, but actually it really doesn't count.
No, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Well,
I
it could count for the contribution had they earned it and then chose to donate it.
For more than 2 pay periods.
Yes, correct. So if someone were to choose to donate comp time and then work comp time prior to the donation, they could donate comp time.
Okay. I just didn't think it'd be a reasonable thing to do. Okay,
For the
now
second part of your
procedure for a
question,
person that gets ill.
for the second part of your question, the answer to that would be, in the event that a person has a specific need, they would go to the HR department and they would apply for a leave. The leave would be, in the case of which we're speaking, would be a family leave. By definition, it would be something that was defined by the federal standard as life-threatening or of such severe nature it would render them eligible for that leave, and then the company is required to grant that leave. It had been unpaid. You're going to see the law changing in the future where it's going to be paid. However, this organization is instrumentality. The state is exempt from that, so it wouldn't be paid. However, they apply for a family leave, and then upon review by the Human Resources Department and proper documentation provided by the healthcare provider, it would then be approved and the individual would then go on a leave. That's when this particular ad hoc catastrophic leave bank could come into play in the event that, as the agreement states, they are not eligible for additional compensation through private insurance, through no-fault insurance, or some other type of income-generating avenue. They would be eligible to apply for help. Based on that, I would then speak with the unions and with the executive director to make all of them aware of the individual needs for the particular person. Upon the executive director's review.
Are you indicating that anyone can participate in this, or is this just limited to certain people?
Any employee could apply, any employee can apply for a family leave.
Yeah.
When applying for it, if they have a hardship, they could make us aware of that, and then we could then address it.
Yeah, I'm talking about this particular.
So am I.
Okay, so it makes no difference if the person has not saved his sick leave or anything like that. He still is eligible, even if someone else saved a year's worth of sick leave.
Eligible to be considered, not necessarily automatically approved.
Yeah, so
Those are considerations.
those are the judgment.
Yeah.
Those are the judgment things.
Exactly.
Okay, but I spoke with a local authority who tried this and gave it up because it was divisive amongst the employees. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because you have to make this judgment call, and then somebody says, well, what about Susie Q? And you didn't give to her. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, they could be divisive.
And I understand, Mr. Coyne, what it is that your concern is. And in the event that the company was actually funding or co-funding it, then there would be a more of a reason or a basis for which people could be concerned about unfair treatment or
I'm just
lack of
telling you that
parity.
this happened in another authority, which is very close by here, where they abandoned it because of this. It caused divisiveness because it's hard to use this program. It's hard to put it in place. It's hard to make that decision who's eligible and not eligible.
Well, I think ultimately what would
And the
happen.
same thing with who contributes and who doesn't contribute is difficult.
What would happen, I think, is this, though. The employee that we just did this for had a good amount of sick time banked up. He didn't abuse his sick time at all. He ran into a series of illnesses that required him to be out multiple times for separate surgeries. It exhausted all of his sick time. He was a good employee and well-liked and respected. People participated in the program. My feeling very strongly is that if it was an employee that was abusive of their time, people simply wouldn't donate. It's a voluntary donation, so they're not automatically bestowed a benefit. So if somebody that was careless with their time, they had no time saved up, and suddenly they needed 6 weeks and they had nothing because they used it as fast as they got it. Most people here are aware of those kinds of, I think, habits from other employees. And even if we said, if anybody cares to donate, you can. If you don't, my guess is people wouldn't, and then the donations just wouldn't occur. So I think it's really, it's kind of a peer evaluation when it really comes down to the end of it.
So you can make a donation to anyone you want. I mean, even if it has a lousy work record, but he still maybe works on that crew or works next to somebody. And then you can say no.
I could say no if I thought it was someone that was abusing it.
Yeah, but
I think the difference too is that with some programs, this goes into a bank and gets stored.
Right.
And then it's up to us to decide to pull it out of the bank. We're not creating a bank and we're not storing anything.
I realize that. Yeah.
It's just
So
going
this-
from one employee to another on a
I
case-by-case
realize.
basis.
It's not a lead bank.
Right. It's not a bank. Yeah.
Bruce? Couple of things. Did you say that the authority is not not required under the new January 1st change in paid family leave?
I did.
That's good.
Yeah,
So
we're
what, they
exempt.
exclude the state?
We're exempt.
And it's also the same thing at the last board meeting. It was mentioned, the question was, well, how this holds somebody over for long-term disability or short-term disability, how long is that? And somebody said 6 months.
Yeah.
And so we're also exempt from that.
Okay.
So we don't have short-term disability or short-term disability insurance, and we don't have long-term disability or long-term disability insurance, but there's a mechanism with the New York State's retirement system to apply for disability retirement, and within the federal system of Social Security to apply for it. And that's part of the history of how public sector evolved, and that where they give these sick days to the tune of 13, perhaps a year, and then it builds up. People, you can accumulate 250 sick days before the accumulator will stop.
No, I was just curious because that will affect, it affects the private sector.
Sure, yeah.
With respect to, I notice here, there is a statement, nothing in this agreement should be construed to mean the authority will release confidential information about a beneficiary, yet the beneficiary might release that confidential information. Are we giving the beneficiary who releases information a release form that says it's okay, that I'm not going to be, that HIPAA doesn't matter? Are we having the employee sign a release form?
I could refer that to council to get an opinion.
I know, I was looking at council as you were.
Whether they should. Presently, HIPAA is designed to stop people who don't have control or particular interest of communicating information to other people. HIPAA doesn't normally apply to the individual themselves if they choose to release their own information.
I agree, if the individual signs it off. I mean,
we're not releasing any personal information to anyone during this solicitation. We just say that they have a need. We don't provide any medical information at all whatsoever with regard to a person's
but you release the name of the individual.
With his consent, yes, and that is in writing.
That's what
yes, yes, absolutely.
Is there a form which allows us under HIPAA not to worry about the release of information?
We do not have the form because we do not release any information. But we ask them to
you release the name and you're collecting time off for a person's illness, period.
Right.
And honestly, that's a HIPAA violation without some formal agreement.
Right. It's in writing.
Right.
I just asked, is there written consent
there is written consent
compliant with the HIPAA regulations?
There is written consent. I thought you asked if there was a form. There's not a form, but there's a written consent.
They do consent to it in writing.
By the beneficiary.
Okay, then let me rephrase that.
Tells what
I don't want to be sued in a HIPAA compliant suit. And we would be. So my question is, can we have a formal form?
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That allows the employee, protects the organization. Our role is to protect the organization.
Yeah. Sure.
A letter from the employee won't cut it. I can tell you, it won't cut it. I like the 10-day equivalent, not below. I thought that's appropriate. I like the average on the salary. Works very well. I am concerned. I would prefer to have a fund that accumulates the time off and provides a committee that determines it's catastrophically, essentially. I think we might have a problem if, well, you have a couple of problems. Let's get to the second one. But the problem of favoritism could create an issue. And I mean, my preference would be to form a catastrophic leave fund. We have that at our agency, works very nicely. I have no idea who the money goes to, but I always, at the end of the year, I'd figure out how much I can give. And we used to collect, hours. And then there was a committee that made the allocation. Nobody knew who it was. I mean, after a while, I used to figure it out. But, I mean, nothing became public other than people making a contribution. That's one concern I have. The second concern I have is, are we acknowledging the tax implications to the person receiving the paid time off?
Yes, taxes are being withheld
from the pay.
Fund. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem. So my biggest concern is I really do think we need to consider a fund so that we can't be accused of, nobody wants to give any time and somebody has a really big problem and that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Well, I don't know if it's a lawsuit or not. This is completely voluntary. I don't like talking about lawsuits.
It's a voluntary.
By people who aren't lawyers. Number one. Number two, if we make this so complicated that it's just not going to be worthwhile, then I think we should step away from it.
I agree with that.
I feel personal. Within my own family, my daughter and my brother have both the recipients of this where they work, they're very happy with it.
Were they voluntary funds or were they funds?
No, it's just a voluntary fund, just the way this is written. Just work, my brother in an extreme situation, and so did my daughter, and people voluntarily gave some of their time.
So why don't we?
I would be in favor of this.
Why don't we set a time frame for a review of this? And I happen to think it's a good agreement.
I do too.
The employees have asked for this. They've already participated on their own. This didn't come from us. It didn't come from Pat. I have full faith that Pat can take care of this.
I think so.
He understands our employees. His managers understand our employees. We could say, let's do it for a year or two, and let's see how it goes. And if it's all godly gooped up, then we'll
Change it.
Change it or end it.
Well, the only thing I would recommend, if you're going to approve it, if people are going to approve it, is that the director be the one who makes the decision.
That's it.
No, it's his designee or his designee. I don't agree with that. I think it should be the director should have the responsibility.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't think he should lower that down to anything.
And I agree that we should maybe do a year or two or 18 months or pick a date. I really don't care. But I do think we need a written exclusion from the HIPAA compliance.
That I would agree with.
Sure.
Yeah, I do like the HIPAA thing,
I do
and
too.
other than that,
And just for perspective, I mean, we've only done this twice in 20 years.
Well,
No,
so it's good to review it. I think that's a good idea. Try it out, see if it goes. I think it'll, I could be wrong. I think it'll cause problems in the employees because it's favoritism in a way, the way it's judgmental.
Well, let's see how it
And I
works.
do believe
But
the director.
it's their sick time. Yes. I mean, it's they're making the judgment.
No, I understand what you're saying is, but I'm just saying that everyone is not as eligible as you think they are. Because someone may not be liked by anybody in the organization.
It's their sick time to give any way they feel
But
or not give at all.
the point is that this person may be well-liked, and everybody says support him, but this guy over here might be, not a good guy, and they say the hell with him. So he goes over here and he doesn't get paid for anything. This guy over here gets paid for everything. That's what I'm saying is there's favoritism and it's a judgmental call, and I don't think it's fair to all employees.
That's where the director comes in.
Well, no, that's where,
You're going to approve it or disapprove it, right?
Well, I mean,
that's why I say if you're
time.
going to do that, you should leave out the designee. It should be just
that's right.
the director, executive director.
But again, the extent of my decision-making would be able to declare somebody eligible, and then it'd be up to the employee to decide if they want to donate or not.
Yes, of course, but I
Something I-
think it's your responsibility to decide.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can
So,
pass down to
So you
somebody.
declare them eligible first?
Can we vote on this tonight?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
don't you want to-
yes.
I'm not going to make a motion.
So are we taking-
Well, I just want to understand where we're going with this. So
Yeah.
if we take designee out of this, everybody's in agreement of that.
Is that in paragraph
or his
three?
designee and remove that comment.
Is that in paragraph 3?
Yes, paragraph
Okay,
3,
okay.
by the executive
Take out, yep,
director or his designee, and remove or his designee.
right.
We have the requirement for the standardized form that meets the legal requirements.
For HIPAA.
Council, take a look at that.
And then put a 2-year
In
trial
18
period on
months,
this?
Some 18 months. You'll know, I mean, as soon as you.
What do you
know.
think?
What do you
It
think?
doesn't matter.
Sure. I mean, the only thing I can say is, God willing, we won't use it in the next 18 months. I mean, we might
Well,
not be
if there's
using
no
it for 5
report, then we'll go
years.
another 18.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we won't continue it, but
Right.
Okay.
so somebody care to make a motion?
I'll make,
Right here.
A second,
I'll
Dave?
make a second on that. Yes.
Any further comments or discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
good discussion.
Committee reports. Capital projects, already went through all those resolutions, and that's, you have anything to add, Jim?
No,
on the
you
finance?
you have 3 months of financials in your binder. Recall, in September, we didn't have a board meeting. In October, we had the budget vote, so I didn't want to throw all that at you. And then you have August, September, and October. Water sales year-to-date is exceeding budget. Consumption is $4.8 million, 4.8 million cubic feet in excess of the prior year, so that's good. Cash flow is relatively good. We have the state retirement system payment coming up in December, so we're trying to get some funds set aside for that. So overall, things are doing pretty well.
Any questions for Jim? Thanks, Jim. Pat?
And the only thing I have, actually, I'll kind of pinch hit for Frank Natolo, who is not here, but this afternoon at noon, we had an operations committee meeting. Denny was here. Mark Ford, who's not here, was here earlier. And it was to look at the cybersecurity assessment that's happening right now. It's in progress. You might recall that New York State has mandated that we do a cybersecurity vulnerability assessment. We put it out through the RFP process. You as a board selected IBM, and they've been on site here now for fairly intensive engagement so far. So today, a representative from IBM at noontime presented where they're at in the process and some preliminary findings. They've done an awful lot of work in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and the goal is that she's going to have a complete report to come back to this board on our December 18th meeting, and we'll present overall, sort of from the global level findings. Those findings will also include a roadmap for what the recommendations are for improvements. They'll be prioritized. They'll have some recommended timeframes involved, and then all of that will go off to the State Health Department in time for the January 1 filing. So it's coming along pretty well. I thought we had a pretty good meeting. I don't know, Denny, if you want to add anything.
It was very informative.
Very informative, very thorough. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do. She did tell me, however, I don't know if you heard this part, but she mentioned earlier that she had just finished up with another company.
Yeah.
She told me privately the other company is a $30 billion corporation with an IT staff of 2. And our preliminary scoring was actually higher than theirs. So, to a certain extent, it doesn't matter how big you are, how much money you have. There's just certain things that need to happen, and some people do it better than others. So we'll have a list of recommendations. Be prepared to see that. Overall, I think things are pretty good, but we can always improve them. So at the December meeting, you'll be seeing, and they'll be here. IBM will actually present that at that meeting. So other than that, I think we're moving along pretty well. And I don't have a whole lot else to share. There's obviously a lot that goes on day to day here, but nothing really that I think rises to the level that we need some discussion at the board. So unless there's any questions, that's all I have for now.
Any questions for Pat? Thank you, Pat. Under old business, new business, I want to take a look at the January and February dates because of those holidays. We run into this right out of the gate going into the new year. So
January the 15th is the holiday, Martin Luther King's.
At the third week.
So when we move that one, I think
Yes.
we have to be concerned about the amount of time between that and then what we picked in February. I think that's what mucked things up last year.
Well, if we move it to the 22nd, the third Monday in February is the 19th, but I think that's a holiday also.
President's Day.
It is. President's Day. So even if we did it, we moved the January meeting to the Monday the 22nd and possibly move the February meeting to Tuesday the 20th, like we've done, that leaves 4 weeks in between.
Sounds good to me.
All right? We'll try to do the best we can on that. Of course, that quorum, what else? Agenda, all that good stuff sometimes comes into play.
So basically, we're going to go the fourth Monday in January.
Instead of the third.
It would be the 22nd,
And the third
unless you
Tuesday.
want to do it the
third
Tuesday
Tuesday.
And the
after.
third Tuesday.
That makes sense.
And the third Tuesday.
Fourth
I-
Monday.
Because January's a long month, so we get an
Yeah.
extra
Yeah,
week,
it
so that
started
gives us
early.
4 weeks in between.
We'll just stick to those Mondays, unless somebody has another preference.
So
We
we got a
could go
Monday and a
after the
Tuesday.
holidays. Well, no, the February one, a lot of
Is it
people go
Tuesday?
away, so that doesn't work anyway, so.
Let's
Let's just go with those 2 Mondays.
Which Monday in February, though?
One
The
after.
20th.
Be the fourth
The
Monday.
26th?
No, I thought you said it was
I
the
said the
20th.
20th in
Tuesday.
January.
Yeah, and
And then
the
if we
4
come
weeks
to here, 4
was.
weeks to here, and if we had it on Tuesday,
Third Tuesday.
5 weeks.
Why
would-
can't we have it on, oh, the 19th is a holiday?
Yes,
President's Day.
yeah, it is.
If you go to the,
That's a holiday.
if you go to Monday, then you get the regular 4 weeks.
Monday's President's Day in
Yeah,
February.
the next Monday.
Oh, the next
The
one.
next Monday would give you 5 weeks.
And then how many in March?
And you only have 3 weeks till the 1 of March.
And then
Oh,
3
no,
weeks.
it's 4 full weeks,
Right.
yes.
Oh.
We could, but then we'd have 3 weeks
into
We're gonna have
March.
to get back on schedule.
Yeah, March is on our regular date.
Actually, if the rest want to
Okay,
just
so
go
this
with
is
it.
a holiday, you're right. But who has children that would be,
Well, no, there's
Going
only so
away.
much jumping around we can do.
okay.
So either we go, you know, it'd either be the two, if that's the holiday, I say
The 20th or the
We'll go
26th?
Tuesday.
the 26th gives us how much?
Let's see, if we go from here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
And
So
then
that's 4 weeks. And then
Well,
it might,
actually,
1, 2,
5.
3, 4 would bring us to the March one.
So what would the February date be then?
I think they're deciding.
Oh, because I'm going to be at a conference Monday, Tuesday, the 19th, 20th
Okay.
of
well,
February.
what about
Oh,
the
so you won't be
12th?
here.
Not the, that
Oh,
night.
But I think it's pretty important.
What about the 12th?
12th would give us 3 weeks.
All right, so 3 weeks there, but then 4 weeks going into March.
If Pat can't be here, there's no sense.
No, but you can be here on the 12th, right?
Yeah.
Lincoln's birthday.
February
We'll
12th?
celebrate Lincoln's birthday.
There you
All
go.
right, well, we're a top hat then.
All right? We're not gonna get it perfect any way we
No,
do it. Are you
right.
gonna be around, Dave?
Yeah, no, I'll be around.
You know, we're not gonna match it up, right? And we'll get,
God willing.
this doesn't do us every, you know, every year. All right, so that's
What are the dates?
February 12th and January,
22nd. January 22nd is a Monday. And February 12th
is a Monday.
So you've got 1, 2, 3. You've got 3 weeks in between,
No big deal.
January to
But
February.
either way, we were gonna get stuck with
And then
that
we'll do
because
5
it was
weeks,
either
we
gonna be
get-
in March and it wasn't gonna work, we gotta have that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any other old, new business? Yes, Dave?
Yeah, I wanted to see, Suez has now been in place for going on 6 months.
Yep.
And I'd like to see if perhaps someone from Suez could come and say what they're finding, what they think, where they're going, where they think they're going, and if they have any preliminary positions on anything, or
They're actually putting together an analysis right now that they'd be more than willing to share. So whether we want to
And they
do
provide
that,
us
just,
monthly reports too.
right, and they do provide monthly reports to us.
excellent.
What's your?
I'd just like to hear what they have, what they're,
Yeah, I'm sure they'd be
where
happy.
they're heading.
More than, matter of fact, they've offered to come to the
I've never
monthly
seen
meeting.
it.
There you
No,
go,
you're not.
if so desire.
You can have that one.
That was quick.
I
Well, I don't like
didn't I didn't know we
No,
got.
that's a good idea, having him here for a meeting.
All right,
Have them come and
we'll
give us
work
a
on
little
that.
update if they can.
Sure.
Anything else? We need a motion to go into executive session regarding contract negotiations.
I'll make a motion.
Second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?